Welcome back to our study in the book of Esther. This book is all about renewing of faith, the faith of Israel being restored in Jehovah God. And it's a wonderful story to see how God lifted up and chose Esther and elevated her to be actually the queen of the empire, and the influence that she had and used to bring honor and glory to God and to save her people. We are already to chapter 4, and this is under this a really rough section. It's the Jews' destruction, and it is lamented, but then it is averted. In chapter 3, King Xerxes, or the Bible has him as King Ahasuerus, has elevated a man by the name of Haman to a very high position. And basically what he says goes. One day he approaches the king. Mordecai, a Jew, whom he found out was, constantly refused to bow down before him. And he didn't like it. Now, people didn't have to bow down before him. The king, yes. But he didn't do that, so he says, I'll get even with him, and basically, he had a great hatred for the Jews because he came from a family that for centuries had way back to Joshua, had fought against each other. And so this is a lot of history to this, just between two families and descendants. So he goes before the king and says, I'll even pay for it. And he basically gets the king to make a decree that all the Jews are to be destroyed on a certain day. And the day is even given. The Persians were very astrologically minded. I'll just use that word. They were fearful people, and they wanted to make sure that the gods were happy and the stars lined up before they did anything. So they set a date, and all of a sudden then Mordecai, who refused to bow down, was the one that was taking care of Esther and helped raise her. And then she's in the palace, loves her very much, and she loves him. He gets word to her, and so we're underway. Here's our theme verse, and it pops up in this chapter. And who knows whether you have not come to the kingdom for such a time as this? And that is Mordecai saying that to Esther, saying, in time, how can we say that you did not come and you were not queen for such a huge course of events that you could save a nation? So here we are in our outline, right in the middle. It's Haman's plot to destroy the Jews. The Persian Empire, just to give you an idea how vast it was. These would be the travel routes. Some have already gone back to rebuild the temple. The wall will get rebuilt under another king. And chronologically, Esther comes right in between Ezra chapter 6 and Ezra chapter 7. And then after Ezra finishes, Nehemiah picks up about a dozen years later. So the Feast of Esther. And here we are to our outline, the Jews' destruction lamented and averted. And first off, there will be mourning. So let's read scripture, very important. We read our verses today. When Mordecai perceived or saw the greater picture of all that was done, Mordecai ripped his clothes, rent his clothes, and put on sackcloth with ashes, and went out into the midst of the city. He went out right into the streets and he cried with a loud and bitter cry. This bitter cry could be heard by many, and it was only used, something like this would only be done and only be used to express national tragedy or great injustice. In this case, it was going to be both. And so he had no other course, but yet he was pierced to his heart and concerned and greatly grieved, and he saw what was going to happen. So he did this, and came even before the king's gate, for none might enter into the king's gate clothed with sackcloth. He came right up to the king's gate, and oftentimes word could get into the king by people that were allowed in. But he didn't go in, but there he was to make his message known. Some archaeological excavation of the empire. And in every province, whithersoever the king's commandment and his decree came, there was great, now see the word spread, there was great in magnitude and extent. It just sort of spread like a flood coming in, and the water just covering everything. There was great mourning among the Jews, and fasting and weeping and wailing, and many lay in sackcloth and ashes. They did exactly what Mordecai did. And here is prayer. So Esther's maids, these are little girl servants, and her chamberlains, these are eunuchs. These are men that, I'll just use the word, are fixed. And so they cannot have children or cannot violate any of the women in the women's chambers. And her chambers came and told it to her. Then was the king, or the queen rather, exceedingly. All of a sudden, now the queen joins them. She is grieved. She's writhed with anguish. And she sent raiment to clothe Mordecai and to take away his sackcloth from him. But he received it not. Then called Esther for Hatak, one of the king's chamberlains. And he was in charge of the chambers and other personal matters of the king, whom he had appointed to attend upon her, and gave him a commandment to Mordecai to know what it was and why it was. And so Esther calls for Hatash and tells him, you get out there and talk to him, man to man, and I want to know what's going on. So Hatash went forth to Mordecai unto the street of the city, which was before the king's gate. And Mordecai told him all that had happened to him, and of the sum of the money that Haman had promised to pay to the king's treasuries for the Jews to destroy them. Also he gave him the copy of the writing of the decree that was given at Shushan to destroy. The word destroy means to vanish or to make go away. Just let them poof, as if they never existed. That's what he wanted to do. And to show it unto Esther, and to declare it unto her, and to charge her that she should go in unto the king, to make supplication or to solicit pity unto him, and to make request before him for her people. So all of a sudden, people are understanding what really is going to go on here, what's really happening. And, you know, the children of Israel, the people of God, the Jews, this is not the first, and it's certainly not the last time that an evil empire or an evil person has tried to destroy and wipe all of them off the face of the earth. Hitler is one of them. And now Israel's surrounded by nations that some of them wish that to happen, and just utterly bomb and destroy all of them. So God's people have it rough. They know best what it is to walk with God and trust with God. They should. And Hatash came and told Esther the words of Mordecai. All right, there has to be vision. Someone has to. Mordecai saw the bigger picture, but there's got to be more than just him. Again, Esther spoke unto Hatash and gave him commandment unto Mordecai. So she says, you're going back out there and talk to him. All the king's servants and the people of the king's province do know that whosoever, whether man or woman, shall come unto the king into the inner court, who is not called, there is one law of his to put him to death, except such to whom the king shall hold out the golden scepter, that he may live. But I have not been called to come in unto the king these 30 days. So Esther says, you get this out to the streets and say, I've not seen the king in 30 days, and I'm not allowed just to go knock on his door. I'm not allowed to just walk into the inner court unless he's asked me. And if I show up and I stand there in the doorway and he sees me, the only way that I can speak and I cannot lose my life is he has to hold out his golden scepter to bid me to come. And they told to Mordecai Esther's words. Now here's the Jews' destruction averted. Then Mordecai commanded to answer Esther, think not with thyself that you shall escape or slip away in the king's house, more than all the Jews. This was excellent. Mordecai came back, and that was the first thing he wanted Hatash to take back in to Esther. And it was this: by you staying where you are and we all get killed, do you think you're going to escape? Esther would probably be one of the first ones to go, because Haman was in the palace too. And she'd lose her life immediately. And so Esther all of a sudden is going to see she's in a situation of lose-lose. And so there's only one way she can win. And we'll see how it goes. For if you altogether hold your peace at this time, then shall there enlargement or relief and deliverance arise to the Jews from another place. He said, if God doesn't you to do this, the only other thing that I can think of is that it's going to have to come from somewhere else. And he used the words another place. And as I studied and researched this, many feel that he was referring to the Lord, but that he was not able to say that in those words. And it might be because of Hatash. So that would get in and say that it would take an act or the hand of God. But who didn't know that the hand or the act of God was through Esther? But you and your father's house shall be destroyed, and who knows whether you are come, or you come to touch the kingdom for such a time or an event as this. I love how that Hebrew would be spoken. And who knows whether you have come to touch the kingdom for such a time as this. Who says it's not you that's going to be used of God to save God's people? Then Esther bade them return Mordecai this answer: Go, gather together all the Jews that are present in Shushan, and fast ye for me, and neither eat nor drink 3 days, night or day. I also and my maidens will fast likewise. And so will I go in unto the king, which is not according to the law. And if I perish, I perish. So Mordecai went his way and did according to all that Esther had commanded him. The chapter ends right here. And once again, we need to say, stay tuned for part 3, to be continued. And this will be continued in the next chapter. But here's some things that I found this from John Maxwell, and I do not mind sharing it with you, and he gives his okay. This is the takeaway in such a time as this. The needs around you, and needs are all around us. There are opportunities, though, before us. There are influences that we have had, that in our life that we have lived, that we have left behind or we have put into people. Hopefully more good than not good. There are successes that are under your belt. But I think more than anything else, there is the Spirit, and there's the Spirit of God. There is courage within us to step up when the Lord calls us, when there's a mission, when there's a need. We respond and we go. So think as you, in this culture that we live in, that we have a leadership that knows nothing about God. Nothing. They hate God's people, but they know nothing about God. And God, who knows God, will not raise up you, your church, your community. Look at the needs around you. The opportunities are there. Look back and thank the Lord for the godly influences you've had in your past and successes that are under you also. And then, with courage, move forward. God will bless you for it. Thank you for watching, and I would just say please hang in there and join us again next week.